welcome to Gavin Ashenden, who's been in bother recently because he's opened his mouth about various things, Gavin. That's not unusual.
I'm never not in bother, Rodney. I've been in bother. I've been in bother since I left the nappy.
Yeah, well, yes, know the feeling. Listen, well, there are three things we've got to talk about this morning. The first thing, let's go into the deep end. Christianity and Islam. Now, the same old chestnut comes up every time. Are we worshipping, Gavin, the same God?
Not at all. Somebody said in a tweet the other day, why don't the knifers and the bombers ever shout Alleluia instead of Allahu Yakbar? And the answer is because Allah wants you to kill and bomb people, and Yahweh doesn't, because they're two different gods, two different religions, two different gods, and actually they're set against each other. You could in fact make a case for saying that Allah is the God of this world, as Jesus describes him in St. John, and also I hate to go to the apocalypse as we Catholics call it, but I often wonder if two of the beasts that come out of the lake, one of them is not Marxism and the other is not Islam, because we have at the moment the Lamb fighting two beasts, and they're both Christian heresies, and I think that I mean, there isn't any question at all that Islam is demonically inspired. Muhammad thought so himself, which is why he wrote that satanic verses patch. The Gabriel who came to him was not the Gabriel we know and love who came to Mary. Different character, different characteristics, different message. Yeah. So Islam is a different religion, a different God. It's a God of great violence and power, and it doesn't like Jesus. So go figure.
Well, thinking about this a bit deeper, Gavin, should we be the king, as an example, of course, includes Islam in his various Easter, Christmas messages, as though this was okay? Should we be having dialogues? Can we have dialogues with somebody so different than ourselves?
The trouble is, Islam is it's almost, when Jesus complains about the children of light being a bit naive, I wish you'd get your act together and be a bit more sensible. We are terribly naive. Islam has its act together. It's very sensible. It knows what it's doing. It has a special doctrine called taqiyya, which allows it to tell untruths if it's in its own interest. So the problem with dialoguing with people who want to take you over, consider that they have the right to kill you, and are prepared to lie while they're doing it, is the dialogue doesn't get very far. We have to wake up and ask ourselves, what is this religion? What has this religion always been? What has it always done? And then decide how we're going to deal with it. I was giving a talk the other day at somewhere quite pretentious, and one of the questions is the one that gets me every time, which is, if our back is really against the wall in civilizational terms, do we have the right to recourse to violence? At what point can Christians defend themselves against people who want to stab, murder, and rape their women and children? And I think this is what we should be discussing at the moment. We should be discussing self-defense, and I don't know the answer to that. I think it's probably contextual, but we're long past the ridiculous chimera of imagining that talking to people is going to do anything. I mean, one of the reasons I've been getting into trouble for a long time is that about the late 90s, a colleague of mine, a very admirable colleague that I used to ask to give papers at interfaith conferences I ran, who was an academic Muslim in his 70s. He pulled out of the last conference we did together about 4:00, just before he was going to deliver his humdinger paper. Said to Gav, "I've got to go home. There's going to be a traffic jam on campus. I'm not going to stay. I'm off." And I said, "Oh, Sadiq, surely not. You must. We need your paper. The whole day is leading up to the climax." And he said, "Look, the thing is, Gav," he said, "I came here in the 1970s with the intention of turning this place into the Islamic Republic of Great Britain. And the thing is, mate," he said, "I've done it. It's done now. There are, what, 10, 12 northern conurbations where the majority of kids under 15 are Muslim. So you see, the thing is, when they get the vote, Gav, they'll vote for a Muslim mayor. And then the Muslim mayor will be asked to apply Sharia law. And so we'll have, well, 12 to 15 cities run by Muslim mayors, increasingly wanting Sharia law. And we outbreed you, we outthink you, we outstrategize you. I've got it. It's in the bag. He said it's so much in the bag, it might happen during the life of my children, let alone my grandchildren. I won't see it. I'm 70, he said, in 1995. But it's in the bag, he said. I'm off home to have my tea. And off he went. And so I sat down, I looked at the figures, and I thought, he's right. So I've just basically been telling people what he told me ever since. And they call me Islamophobic and a bigot and an alarmist and a catastrophist. And I said, no, I'm just telling you what the Muslims say when they tell the truth, because they're tired and they've succeeded and they want to go and have their tea.
Well, let's think about this and draw some conclusions. We've got most people thinking the way that, well, they're only in the minority. Most Muslims are great people. Maybe 1 or 2% are of the caliphate nature, want to take over our country. Is this true, Gavin? Or do we look at the last census that when they were asked, as Muslims, would you like a caliphate for GB? And they said, and 30% of them said yes. Now,
Yeah.
this is treason. Should they be allowed to stay in the country?
No, they must be remigrated forcefully. I mean, there's no question about it. Either you stay and they take over, or we encourage them to leave by whatever means we think are necessary. I mean, that's why David Betts, professor of war studies, says we're heading for civil war, because there will come a point when even the sloppy, lazy, brainwashed English decide this is not a good thing. They can't get dentists, they can't get doctors, they can't get education, they keep on being raped and they don't want to. At what point will the people of England wake up and say, this is our country? We don't have another country to go to. I was very poignant when there was an Englishman talking to an Israeli who said, I'm off back to Israel. He said, oh, I'm off to Israel. This is, I don't want to die here. And then the Englishman said, we don't have an Israel. We only have England. So at what point do the English complain? So, I mean, I don't know, but a couple of brief things. First of all, the United Arab Emirates is so concerned about the quality of Muslims that we have here that it won't send its students here on scholarships anymore. It's too Islamically dangerous for the UAE. So think about that. That's well, listen to what the Muslims tell you, for goodness sake. And then the next thing is, yes, I was driving across Cairo in Egypt about the year 2000 on my way back from a lovely retreat I was part of at a Coptic Orthodox monastery. And my taxi driver was a Copt. So he said, hello, mate, who are you? Where are you going? What are you doing? He said, can I give you a bit of advice? I said, yeah, I'm always up for advice. Well, he said, don't make the same mistake we did. I said, what do you mean? Well, he said, we Christian Copts were Egypt. Egypt was ours. This is our country. And the Arab Muslims came in and they outbred us, and now they bomb us and torture us and lock us up. And they do. They literally bomb them. I mean, there'd been a bomb in a Coptic church, which killed about 40 people who were saying their prayers and worshiping. He said, if you let them into your country, they'll outbreed you, and then they'll do to you what they're doing to us. I thought that was a bit rich, but actually that was before Merkel opened the gates to millions and millions of Muslims. That was before both illegal and legal immigration turned it into millions every year. And so that is exactly what's happening. My real source of interest is who's done it to us, who's behind all this, who are the people behind the EU's policies. I mean, someone's directing this, and the only question is, at what point do we stop and say enough? We're not having our country taken away from us. We have a natural right to defend our country, and when does that come? I think we're quite close to it. I'm sorry to say. I mean, who wants to live in these times? Who wants to live in civil war? Who wants to fight Muslims on the street of Great Britain. It's a dreadful, dreadful place we've come to. But it's not because I absolve myself from some responsibility. I've been saying this for 25 years quite loudly and at some cost. But I mean, I never knew that people. I knew that people wouldn't pay any attention. But on the other hand, you got to do what you got to do.
You're also concerned with reform. Now, the majority of us apparently are seeing this as the only way out of the state that we're in as a nation. And there is dear old Nigel recruiting quite a lot of Muslim brothers into his, well, cabinet to be.
This is very difficult. We've seen the Labour Party in sort of in the years since Tony Blair fail to get power because they kept on wanting to keep to a sort of the purity of ultra socialist doctrine, and people didn't want to vote for them, and so they had to choose between the purity of their beliefs and getting power. And this has always been the case. You can't if you're in politics, you've got to get power, or there's no point. So Nigel Farage has decided he has to get power in the next election, or there's no point. And then he knows what it's like to try and get into Parliament and fail. So he's got to get power, or there's no point. He's decided that he's going to do it with Islam. And when I've asked the people around him what they're going to do next, they say, "Oh well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it." Now, I'm not saying they're wrong, Rodney. I've no idea. I mean, we're talking at every time of the lesser of several evils, and the least of the evils is already too much. So I don't know what they'll do. But I was asked to give a talk. I've given one political speech in my life about a year ago to Reform a county meeting in where I live, and I'm about to give another one. I'm about to address the Cambridge University Conservative Association at their AGM in the House of Lords, Rodney. So look at me. There's influence for you. Of course, the trouble is they're finished because there's nothing to conserve anymore. I mean, the thing about I'm going off on a slight rabbit hole, but I'll come back to it. But just briefly, Nick Fuentes, that rather troubled young American of extreme views, it is much influenced by a thinker whose name I'm afraid I haven't committed to memory yet, but I have committed to memory his insight, which was that several decades ago, all the major organizations in the West had already been taken over by the left: the law, medicine, music, education, the police. They've all been taken over. And the thing about conservatives is conservatives like to conserve what is good, and then if they can make it better, often they make it worse. But that's the principle. But you can't conserve something that belongs to your enemies, or you do their work for them. So you can't actually be a conservative in the West now. There's nothing to conserve. And what would you conserve? The Church of England? It's gone already. Catholic Church? We're in the middle of the same civil war, trying to make sure that we're the only people not taken over. And we will be the only people not taken over, although it's a close-run thing at the moment. But who else? Where else is? There's nothing to conserve. So, I mean, my difficulty is saying to the Cambridge Conservatives, who would normally be the rulers of this country for the next 40 years, several prime ministers would be in this audience and chancellors, but not. They're finished. They've got nothing to conserve. So, and I doubt they'll ever make it back into Parliament after the next election. We live in strange times, and so the reason for going from there from Reform to the poor Conservatives is to say that when I gave my speech to Reform, they liked it very much. I talked about Marxism and Islam, and they sent it to Nigel, and Nigel sent a note back saying, "I know Gavin, and he's all right, but he's never allowed to talk about Islam to Reform again. Not to invite him to talk about Islam." And the people got upset, and they said, but the things he said were true, and they're quite helpful, and we believe them. No, it's banned. So Nigel's going to go into power with the Muslims, which makes him look a bit like Keir Starmer, really, because that's what Keir Starmer's been doing. And so what's the difference? I really don't know. I mean, I'm not sufficiently politically intelligent to know whether or not Reform could make it without Islam. Maybe it could, maybe it should, but he's chosen not to. So there is no other reform. There's the alliance. And then, of course, you come to splitting the right, which gives us Starmer for 10 years. And so, like I said, it's the lesser of many evils, and the least of the evils is already terribly unpalatable. So I'm not a politician, Rodney. I don't know the answer.
Well, there's some bizarre choices being made at the moment. Future mayor, and I'm thinking of Layla Cunningham to take over from Sadiq because she's a Muslim. Now, I didn't think Muslims voted for women. What's Nigel doing there?
Don't know. Well, he's pursuing the course of gaining power. So he's decided he thinks it works. He's surrounded himself with some very competent people. But honestly, I've tried to keep out of politics because I'm not. I do try and talk about things I know and not things I don't know. And I'm politically a bit naive. That's why I'm not a politician. That's why I didn't become a lawyer. I became an Anglican clergyman because I thought the answer to everything was the pursuit of the kingdom of heaven. And if we got on with that, other things would fall into place. And still, even though I sound as I'm being political, my aim is the kingdom of heaven. I believe that if you introduce people to Jesus, Jesus will change them. And if Jesus changes enough people, it becomes political. But that's up, that's for him to do. My business is to tell them about Jesus and say, you don't have to live in this hellhole. You can go to heaven, and you can start the process now. And with enough people doing it, you can produce the extraordinary civilization that Christianity has produced, which was very benign in many ways when you compare it to the historical alternatives.
Danny Kruger, are we holding any light
Oh,
there?
well, he's wonderful. There's Danny Kruger, there's James Orr. These are very, very high quality people. But honestly, I don't want to stray into areas of any further into areas of my natural incompetence. I won't help anybody. I'll say stupid things.
Well, let's go to Rome then. Gavin, we've got a Muslim prayer room with all the mats.
No, not really. No, no, no. We got to choose. We got to choose between the things that are serious and the things that are not serious. So this is look, the thing about Rome is it's a big place with lots of administrators and doing all the stuff administrators do. And what you've got is you've got a building curator. So the Vatican Library is an extraordinary library. It holds an extra. I must not overuse the word extraordinary. It holds a great variety of Islamic manuscripts. So it gets Muslims coming to look at Islamic manuscripts in the Vatican Library, and in the same way as if they said to you, "Look, would you mind giving us a tea urn? We'd like some tea while we're here as your guests." They said, "Have you got a broom cupboard? We can kneel quietly and say our prayers." And the answer should be yes, we'll soundproof it and make sure the door's closed. There's no harm in it. It's just a broom cupboard, so they can chant Allahu Akbar while they while they do what they want to do. It's being given a symbolism it doesn't deserve. There are many more. I mean, the thing that should make your hair fall out is not the broom cupboard where they can say their prayers in the Vatican Library. It's the flipping Abu Dhabi Accord, where Pope Francis allowed himself foolishly to say things about Islam that are not true and must be put right. That's dangerous. We got to fix that.
I wonder sometimes how much a committee gets into everything. And I'm going to swing this round to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, co-owner of Manchester United. And he's in trouble, basically using the word, we're being colonized, that's the word,
Yes.
by immigrants. And Sir Keir doesn't like that. His language is offensive. And of course, we've had the usual apology because Sir Keir has asked for this, but it's a non-apology, Gavin, like so many apologies are. And did he overstep the mark?
Not at all. He told the truth. It's Southport again. I mean, at Southport, the people came onto the streets and said, "We don't want young Islamic thugs killing our baby daughters. Stop it. We're not being colonized by psychotic Islamic thugs to kill our daughters." And the government put them in prison. It sent out the police. It did two-tier policing, and it was terrified of Southport because the people came onto the streets to tell the truth. We desperately need people to tell the truth, Rodney. And he was doing that. We have been colonized. The government hated it because they realized instantly people would sit up and listen. They'd say, oh, my word, that is the right language. That is what's happening. Maybe it should be stopped. And then they take to the streets again. We're going to have to take to the streets to get our country back. And they're terrified of anything that will cause a trigger to do it. Southport triggered it. He triggered it by telling the truth. There'll be other triggers. At some point it will happen. Whether we'll succeed or not, I've no idea, but that's what will happen.
You know France very well, and they would not have tolerated, as we in United Kingdom have. They'd been on the streets, the pavements would be up. I'm not suggesting for a minute you would like that, but when you look at the ordinary Joe, never mind the pundits saying this, that, and the other, the ordinary Joe is on the cusp of doing something, but the cusp should have come a long while back, and still we are very low key, but it's doing us no good. What do you suggest that we do as a nation? Because the majority would agree with what you're saying.
Well, we need a leader. We need leaders. We need people who'll stand up and do these things. But Tommy Robinson offered himself as a leader, and the government locked him up in solitary confinement as a political prisoner. I know they did it as part of a civil defamation case, but that isn't the point. That's just how the route they took to get there. I think Tommy Robinson is one of the bravest people I've ever had the privilege of meeting. I think I'm not sure he's entirely, he's as balanced in the head as I'd like him to be, but I wouldn't be balanced in the head if I'd been through what he's been through. I'm not sure I am balanced in the head. But what point I'm making is that Tommy Robinson has been telling the truth all the way through. And some of your listeners may say, what is Gavin doing supporting Tommy Robinson? And the answer is, he's been lied about assiduously by the establishment, who set out to make him toxic. He's a Luton lad who got involved in right-wing politics as a kid, discovered that actually there was no future in that, and moved into social activism as a reporter in order to expose what Muslims were doing, raping our children. And the government have tried everything possible to shut him up and to make him unacceptable. Every time I've said something about Tommy Robinson, I get letters from people I've known in the past vomiting over me, saying we would never have been your friend 30 years ago if we'd known you'd been the kind of fascist, bigoted Nazi who supported a man like Tommy Robinson. And I write back and say, but you've no idea what you're talking about. I mean, one of the things I saw on GB News the other day, to stop me if I'm digressing, just pull the button or raise your hand, was they're trying to get Patrick Christie thrown off GB News, and there's a Muslim campaign to get Ofcom to censor him. And what they've done is they stitched together things he hasn't said over images he's not part of, and released them as if it's a GB News tweet and shouted racist. It's a complete stitch up. And he was he got a Muslim lawyer on to essentially look at the facts, hoping the Muslim lawyer would agree with him that they'd stitched him up and that they shouldn't do. What the Muslim lawyer did was to do. I mean, I couldn't believe they're still trying this, but it just works like a dream every time. He said to Patrick Christie, "I can't believe you're sitting here as a journalist saying that Islam is violent. Well, Islam is a religion of peace. I tell you what, Mr. Christie, quote to me from the Quran where it says we're violent." And Patrick Christie went, because he doesn't know the Quran and he can't quote from the Quran. But it's a line they try often when their backs are against the wall. The thing about Tommy Robinson is he's written a book on the Quran. He can quote from the Quran. They don't ever try it with him. They can try it with a well-intentioned and very competent newscaster. It works with 99% of non-Muslims, which is why they do it. So we need a leader, to go back to your original question. We don't have any leaders. I've asked myself if I should try and be that leader. And I said to myself, no. First of all, I'm 71. I'm no good at the barricades anymore. I've got a dodgy hip. I'm a liability now. But even so, I see it as a temptation not to do what I believe God has called me to do, which is to busy myself with the kingdom of heaven. But isn't this what Judas did? I mean, Judas had exactly the same temptation as I've got. He said to the Lord, we've got to get rid of these Romans. Look what the Greeks did to us 300 years ago. Do you not remember, Lord, about our martyrs and the Zealots and the Maccabees? Lord, you must remember what they did and what it cost them, Lord. The Romans are doing the same thing. We've got to get rid of, if you have these powers, Lord, let's get rid of the Romans. And when our Lord wouldn't do it, he betrayed him. I'm having the same temptations as Judas had. Come on, Lord, let's cleanse our country and give it back to the people who own it. But the thing is, ultimately, England isn't our country. Ultimately, we're citizens of the kingdom of heaven. We just happen to have been lodged here on the way through with the instructions to make it as much like heaven as we can in preparation. So I'm not going to kill or die for England, but I'm not a political leader. I think I want people to be saved from hell. And so I talk about Jesus and the need to be converted and they need to be kept safe from the evil one. But I don't know who the political leader is for this project. I have no idea. Maybe there won't be one. Maybe we'll all just wimp out and collapse in pathetic self-pity, and maybe we don't deserve to have a country.
Finally, Gavin, we look across the pond to Trump, for good or for bad. Is he doing good or bad?
Well, when I see the Donald, I think of Shakespeare and King Lear, because I see Donald as I see him as the Joker, as the court clown. I see Donald as the exception. He uses humor and hyperbole to discomfort his wretched enemies who deal only in power and have no sense of humor. See, humor is the most wonderful antidote to evil and power, Rodney. And Donald is very good at it. And they take him seriously, and they suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, and they overreact. And when they're overreacting and off balance, he strikes a sensible deal and achieves something really quite reasonable. And he's the only person in American politics who doesn't owe anybody. It looks like he may be the only person in American politics who hasn't had sex with underage girls, courtesy of Epstein. We've just discovered from the files that in 2006, Donald Trump reported Epstein to the FBI and said that Ghislaine Maxwell was evil and they were doing evil things. As far as I can see, he's the only person to come out of this what's going to be a terrible, terrible, terrible swamp with clean hands, as far as I can see. Donald is doing. I've no idea whether he'll do it well or badly, but nobody else could do what he's doing. Everybody else was a hostage to the political system. Everyone else was bought, frankly. He was too rich and too egotistical to buy. And you had to have a rich, egotistical bull of a man not to be destroyed by the swamp. They've constrained him. They've tricked him. He was very naive in the first 4 years. They ran rings around him. They stole the election from him. And now he's there. The real question is, who's coming next? Will it be Vance as a good Catholic? And he is. I think Trump is doing as well as he could do in once more, utterly impossible circumstances. If you want a bit more excitement, I was at a meeting in America about 2 months ago, addressing a group in which one of his former security advisors was there. And I said to him, do you remember Vietnam? And he said, yes, we do remember Vietnam. I said, I bet that's put you off invading places to stop Marxism and freedom of speech, hasn't it? Yes, it has a bit, he said. It wasn't a good experience. I said, well, I'd like you to reconsider, because England is your next Vietnam. The only way that we will survive is if you invade and save us. We can't save ourselves. We won't save ourselves. Maybe we don't deserve to be saved. But only you can save us. And it's the same thing in a different guise. Starmer is not Ho Chi Minh. And the woke left are not Vietnamese Marxists. But it's the same idea. It's the same movement. It's in a different time, in a different context, but it's the same spirit. And America will have to decide, I think, whether it lets England go. Vance knows this already, which is why he made that very, very dark joke about asking who the first Islamic nuclear power was going to be, and his answer was Great Britain. So they know.
Yeah.
The only question is, will they do anything about it? I suspect not, but there's no reason why we shouldn't ask them.
Bizarre times indeed when we look at allegedly Tommy Robinson becoming a Christian and the
Yes, yes.
savior of the United Kingdom.
He asked me to help him about 10 years ago. We had a secret meeting in London and said, would I go and stand on the Royal Courts of Justice with him? And I said, Tommy, the thing is, I think you're very brave. You're an amazing man, but you're doing politics. I don't do politics. And politics goes wrong. The church gets compromised by politics, and it makes terrible, terrible mistakes. I'm actually rereading my way through the Spanish Civil War at the moment because the view that I had of it the whole of my life was wrong, and I need to get a different view of it. That's another story. You'll know more about it than I do. But I said to him, if you became a Christian, it would be different. If you became a Christian, I'll stand by you. And he has become a Christian, but it's only 6 months or 9 months ago, and we need, there needs to be a bit of time for us to see, will it stick? It doesn't always stick. What kind of Christian? So we're in very, very early days. Who knows what's going to happen? But what an incredible miracle that he should have. He's organizing carol services on the Strand. Rodney, doesn't God have a sense of humor? Isn't that lovely? If you want a real English carol service on the Strand in Whitehall, tell you what, don't ask the Archbishop of Canterbury. Tommy Robinson will do it for you.
And the significant thing of that, Gavin, as you and I know, that the Church of England objected to it very strongly.
Yes, they tried to close it down on the grounds it was too Christian. It was much too Christian for them. They've changed sides, Rodney. They're working for the other side.
Yeah. Gavin, it's been a joy as usual. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. There aren't many people who let me on the airways nowadays, Rodney. You may be one of the very few left. Anyway, it's been lovely to talk to you and great to see you. God bless all your listeners.